let's see, take my glasses off so I can see what I'm doing. I will introduce Tim Munkeby first. He is actually, he said he's not speaking, he's here to critique.
Oh.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So, Tim Munkeby was born and raised in Minnesota following graduation from the University of Minnesota. He got a job teaching English, improvisational theater, and creative writing. After teaching in Minnesota and Columbia, Tim founded a successful financial planning firm, lectured at universities, and published several books. His writing pokes at systems that create injustices in hopes of inspiring those who believe they can still make a difference to do so. He's committed to making sure every child has a nurturing advocate. Given his lifelong interest in reading and writing, it's no surprise that Tim now serves on the board of Minnesota Rally to Read. Our actual speaker is Tim Reardon, the Tims I call him. Tim is a member of the Roseville Rotary and is a seasoned executive consultant and professor who aspires to accelerate opportunities to break the cycle of generational poverty and racial injustice in Minnesota. He brings a track record of creating authentic, mutually respectful community relationships, implementing evidence-based strategies, building multi-sector partnerships and collaborations, and inspiring people to give their time, talent, and treasure for a worthy cause. He is the executive director and ex officio board member of Rally to Read. Today's presentation is about mobilizing communities so every child reads proficiently. Welcome, Tims.
And I would actually like to welcome the mayor, Rosalind Harmon, to our board of directors as well. Would you like to talk about what your aspirations are in Golden Valley related to Minnesota's Rally to Read? Should we start there?
Okay. Can I just speak from here?
Sure.
Taping it so it helps.
Oh, to go.
Oh,
on
if,
this.
I don't know if anybody's, okay.
If you wouldn't mind, we'll take your presence.
Tim knows how to lay it on thick. My goodness, surprise, surprise. I am an educator, 25 years, and so education is very important to me in terms of young people and their success, not only in school but in life. And so when Tim presented to me Minnesota Rally to Read and being a board member, I accepted without any hesitation because however I can help with elevating a child's education, I'm all for it. Many years ago, I developed a curriculum on behalf of United Way's Reading by Third Grade initiative, and I helped close the achievement gap with Bethune Elementary School and Lucy Laney. And so when Tim brought this to me about, the mission and the vision regarding Minnesota Rally to Read, I thought, wow, how cool would that be to have this initiative be a part of Golden Valley's Robbinsdale School District as well as Hopkins School District for our young people who are in the womb all the way up to third grade, just learning about cognitive skills through reading. Because I truly believe that when you're reading, listening to music, whatever it is that you're doing, our children can understand that, they can feel that, and they can hear that. So it's really important with their developmental stages that they go through while they're growing up. But third grade is that pivotal moment where they can lose all of what they've learned, which makes that achievement gap even wider moving forward in fourth grade and all the way up to their post-secondary education. So I'm going to stop talking, but for me, I think that it's really important for us to partner with our school districts as well as with BREC, because BREC has, I believe, they go all the way from pre-K to their senior. Yep. So we are going to sit at the table to really figure out what they need. But I'm just excited about this initiative to really look at the data to help our kids just be the best by the time they're third graders. So thank you.
Thank you. So let's start. I want you to imagine you're in third grade. All right, and it's reading class, and we're doing a chapter, right? And paragraphs. You're gonna read the paragraph, you're gonna read, and then you're gonna read. And then Tim, it's his turn. He doesn't know how to read. How's he gonna feel? What are some of the feelings he's gonna have?
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed?
Scared?
Scared?
Shame.
What was that?
Shame.
Shame. What are the kids gonna?
disrupt too.
What's that?
I'll disrupt too.
Oh,
Gotta
you're
get
gonna
my
disrupt.
attention.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna escape. In the playground is next. Every student gonna call him? Because he flubbed it, he missed it.
Dumb.
Dumb.
Stupid. Dim Tim.
Oh, no. I hope you don't speak
All
from
right,
personal
so
experience.
this poor guy can't read, third grade. What are the consequences? What are the consequences of not being able to read?
Depression?
Yep,
Sadness?
yep.
Social isolation.
Social isolation. Who's gonna hire this kid? So, given all that, what we really do know, the research is very clear. When kids can't read proficiently by grade 3, their life determinants of health go in the wrong direction. Those who can, they're a positive trajectory. And you already talked about the consequences of not reading. And I think one of the most tragic ones is the impact that ultimately has on the economic engine of our state. And I think as you look at this, the other frightening correlation is that there's a pathway to prison for kids who are not able to read by grade 3. Art Rolnick, who's done a lot of studies on the return on investment, I was sitting next to Art and I said, is it fair to say that you could predict how many prison beds we need in 15 years based on the reading proficiency scores? And he said, absolutely. So the scope of this problem, over half of the kids in our K-12 classrooms right now do not read proficiently. It's over 500,000 kids, and you could fill up the US Bank Stadium 7.5 times with that number of kids. And as you see, even factoring in kind of the COVID slide, we're moving in the wrong direction on our reading proficiency. And even if you look back at 2018 scores as a state, that's still half your kids not reading proficiently. So, and if you look underneath those general stats, there are incredible inequities, incredible disparities, incredible opportunity gaps. And so, it hits our pockets of poverty, our Black, Brown, and Native kids. There's a gender gap, and those kids with different learning abilities, folks who speak more than one language. And this is so profound that many of the communities that are most affected by this really see reading as the great equalizer. This is the civil rights opportunity of our day. And so, based on all this information, we said, well, let's get a big, hairy, audacious goal. Let's create a state that has the highest reading proficiency with the fewest inequities, and let's get there with what Martin Luther King talks about, a fierce urgency of now. And if we do that, one of the things we want to make sure we do is that making sure that kids are wired to read by age 3 and then read proficiently at grade level. So you might want to say, well, what does wired to read mean? Well, in order for a kid to be wired to read, these social determinants of health need to be in place, right? So there's individualized approaches, emotional and social development, early exposure to language, healthy brain development, nurturing relationships, quality early education, and social economic support. Those factors coming together help a kid be able to be wired to read. So our question is, what would it take to reach this big, hairy, audacious goal? Well, one of the things that's happened at the legislature is they passed the Minnesota READ Act. So now when kids cross the threshold of a classroom, every teacher is going to be teaching the science of reading that we know scientifically, helps a kid learn in a way that we know works. And in the past, that hasn't been the case. And we've got a couple generations of kids as a result of the way we've taught them how to read didn't work. And it's not that kids can't learn. Kids are little sponges. You look at infants and toddlers, they just absorb the world around them. So getting kids to be able to be wired to read by age 3 is where we're really going to focus our efforts as a community, because the school doesn't kick in universally until kids are in kindergarten, right? So it really ends up becoming a community response. And what are the kinds of responses a community can do? Well, we can point fingers and place blame. Oh, it's those parents, or it's because of those teachers, right? Or we can set teachers up to be scapegoats. We can ignore the problem, or just be apathetic about it, or continue to fail teach kids how to read, or we can start investing in literacy now, and if we don't, we will pay exponentially more in the future for the kids that we have failed. And there's a Harvard professor, Robert Putnam, who's written a book, Bowling Alone, and he studied social capital. He calls Minnesota the capital of social capital because we're unprecedented. How many people vote here? How many people contribute to charities? How many civic organizations people participate in, right? Minnesota's off the charts. Well, if Minnesota has all that social capital, there's no reason we can't achieve this BHAG. Mississippi is beating us. They have higher reading proficiency, fewer racial inequities than Minnesota. Minnesota has the second worst racial inequities in reading than any other state, except my home state, Wisconsin. So what we want to try to do as communities, and we're trying to mobilize communities like Golden Valley across the state to create a Rally to Read coalition. And we want to do that in a way that gets the community engaged, and we want to steer people in a direction of what we know works, what researchers tell us. If you do these things, you're going to get the most return for the efforts that you do as a community. And so our call to action and what we want to ask the Golden Valley Rotary Club, we're asking Roseville, we're asking a lot of Rotary clubs across the state, what can you do? What would you like to do? And so we want to get a Rally to Read coalition going here in Golden Valley. And when we do that, we would facilitate what we call a community innovation process. And by that, we bring the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, anybody who cares about this issue, we want to welcome them to the table. And we would, for many communities, there's existing partnerships between community groups and schools And so for some communities, we would build on what already exists, right? In other communities, you'd refresh those kinds of things, but in some communities, this would be the first time that they're really developing a comprehensive community engagement, community partnership. And so when we do this in Golden Valley, we'd want to map the local ecosystem. What already exists, right? In terms of early childhood, brain development and literacy. Figuring out what is there, map the social capital. Who could we bring to the table? And the mayor already talked about bringing the superintendents, bringing Breck's school to the table. We want to bring the civic organizations. We want to go back to the Optimist group and mobilize faith communities. All the groups that could potentially play a role here. And if you think about where we're located right now, or take for example of Meadowbrook School, how many blocks away is it from Tenant Corporation? Yeah, I mean, it's like Allianz Corporation is like, you could walk over to Meadowbrook. Down the road, you've got General Mills. How many high-end car dealerships are there along 394? Think about the capacity that this community has to make sure that Golden Valley could be the community that has the highest reading proficiency and the fewest inequities. So we would then help people come together, look at who could be the champions, right? And we'll do all that kind of gathering of data and begin to invite people to a community innovation forum where we'd examine the need here, gather people together to talk about what a common understanding is, generate ideas about what we could do specifically based on what we know works research-wise, determine an action plan, and then once you determine an action plan, monitor whether or not it's making a difference for the kids that need it the most. So on a regular basis, we would do that. And we've already kind of talked about this. So if you think about it, we want to take what currently exists, where the schools take on a lot of responsibility. A lot of people think, well, we don't have to teach a kid to read until they hit the classrooms, right? Well, actually what we're learning is the community needs to step up to support more things that would happen in a family and allow those kids then to cross the threshold of a school wired to read. Otherwise, we deliver them to a teacher and expect miracles, right? So it's important to recognize in these conversations what schools can do and what they can't do. And if you think about the volume of time kids actually spend in a classroom versus in their families or communities, and we talked about the fact that the schools don't reach kids until they're 5 years old, and that early explosive brain development, 80% of children's brains are developed before the age 3. And those neurons that get stimulated during that time, they thrive. But a kid whose brain isn't stimulated, the brain actually at age 3 says, well, I can just prune those neurons. I don't need them. And then we're always playing catch up with that population of kids. So the other thing that oftentimes happens in our conversations are, well, if those parents would just, and we blame parents for what isn't happening. And I think what we've got to come to realize is, what are some families able to do? And what are some families, for whatever reason, not able to provide a equity of opportunity for their kids to develop their brains by age 3. So we want to increase education and awareness. The action plan would look like this: increase education awareness, help people understand how important that early childhood brain development is. And there are a lot of tools that exist out there. I don't know, how many have had a child? How many have? Did you get an owner's manual with that?
I lost it.
You lost
First
it.
day.
Yeah, you buy an appliance, you get an owner's manual. Well, what we do have is a lot of great community-wide or efforts to help people understand what's going on in the development of their kids. But most people aren't aware of these kind of resources that are out there. We want to make sure that when a woman is pregnant, they become aware of these things, that at birth we could give them a box of resources that have all the community things that could support them. We want to optimize community connections. And any touch point that we have, childcare centers, with our pediatrician's office, with the OBGYN's office, right? Parks and Rec, faith communities, food shelves. Where are all the ways where we could interact with kids and families, make sure books are available, give information? Imagine restaurants in Golden Valley having placemats with literacy games and lettering games and stuff like that. So while you're waiting for your food, instead of your face being in a screen, you could be doing something that interacts with your kids. Imagine having restaurants where it's no screens allowed. This is a place where you interact with your kids. There's a lot of opportunities here. We also want to make sure that we equip those parents with that owner's manual, and there's a lot of great resources. So a lot of communities are gathering together and making sure that every newborn has a little box, and in the box is their bedtime ritual, books, blankets, teddy bear, things and all the resources that a parent would need to plug them into what exists in the community. That's what we're hoping to do. And surround kids with support so that when we know a kid is falling behind, or when we identify a parent that's going to struggle providing them with an equity of opportunity, how do we provide that with the right time, the right intensity, and the right resources? And we want to do this in ways that respect and are grown by the cultures that are most affected, the communities that are most affected by it. We're going to raise some money to try to make this happen and give incentives to local communities to participate. So we've got an appropriations bill and an aggressive fundraising ability, or a capacity building that we're going to do. We want to get at least 12 communities involved in our first year. And Monticello is our first place where we're doing it. We got a prototype going there. And guess what? It was one Rotarian who got it started. Monica Martin raised her hand. She said, I want to get a model going here that would work for Spanish-speaking people, and I want to replicate it across the state. That's how Minnesota's Rally to Read got started. And when we presented in Roseville, guess what? Another Rotarian raised their hand and said, I want to get this going in Roseville. And now we have someone in Victoria wanting us to get things started there. And we've got folks in central Minnesota. So there's a lot of initiatives that are bubbling up. The more people get aware of this, the more they say, hey, I want this to happen in my community. And the beauty is, when Monticello, they sent out 50 invitations. We thought, oh, maybe we could get a dozen people or so to come. 85 people showed up. You present them with an idea to help kids, they're all over it. So the bottom line is, it makes economic sense. For every dollar you invest in early childhood, it's an 18% return. That's pretty phenomenal. You were just talking about that. And so Monticello believes it's the little community that maybe it could inspire Minnesota to become the state that it did. So will Golden Valley want to help achieve this BHAG? Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, Peggy.
How do you determine where the best place to start is?
Where's the best place to start? You know, I think there's a lot we could do to geocode where the concentrations are. I think in Golden Valley, we could probably easily look at the reading test scores that the state collects. You can break that down by school. And if you talk to elementary school people, they can usually tell you where the pockets of poverty are, where the pockets of perhaps new immigrants are, so you can target your efforts. And that's what we really want to try to do. You know, every kid we want to get to be able to read, but we want to focus our efforts on those communities that need it the most.
I would caution though that if half the kids or less can read proficiently, that's not just a racial or a poverty situation, that's, you know, general population. Half of the kids can't read, so.
So will you be able to stay after for a few moments if there's more questions than that?
Yeah,
This is a shy group, you know, they may wanna talk one-on-one.
yeah.
Okay. Tim and Rosalind, would you please come forward? At Golden Valley, we have a presentation. Well, one thing I wanted to mention. How often have you heard that it just takes one? And in Rotary, that's one of our mantras is, it just takes one. And it's so true, somebody who has the dream. And thank you guys for coming and helping us with this. Sounds like great. We have a board meeting coming up, and I'm sure the board members will bring this up for discussion too. But also in Golden Valley, we have a contest for the best photographers. This is a few years ago. And so Peggy and some of her buddies went through all of the winners and determined the best ones that we'd like to make up into note cards. So you don't get another mug, like you do it all the so many places. But it's a set of note cards, and they're all from Golden Valley spots. And we want you to enjoy, use, and think of us. Thank you for coming, everyone.